What's up guys, the Strong Boys 19 here. Welcome back to the discography of Megadeth. I know it has been a very long while since I reviewed the previous album, which was 1999's Risk, but I wanted to come back to Megadeth to complete the discography, and since the guys have been one of my favourite bands, I wanted to go into the rest of their albums and potentially rank them, hopefully before the end of the year. Today I'm going to be reviewing the band's 9th studio album entitled The World Needs a Hero. The World Needs a Hero came out on the 15th of May 2001, making this the first Megadeth album in a long time to return back the look of the classic logo since Euthanasia back in 1994, Vic Rattlehead on the front cover since Rust in Peace back in 1990, the first album to have the different guitar player of Al Pitrelli from Trans-Siberian Orchestra, as well as with being involved in Savatage to Alice Cooper, amongst different musicians alike. This is the first post the involvement of Marty Friedman since he left the band in 2000, and it's the last to have David Ellefson on the bass guitar and also with Jimmy DeGrasso on drums. The World Needs a Hero is an album that I've had most of the time a bit of a difficult time with, because there's a point of me that wants me to really like this album, but the more I thought about it, when it comes to the differences of opinions from fans, some of them love this album, some of them call this underrated and some of their favourites, but other Megadeth fans think the opposite and cite it as one of their weakest. I am, for the most part, at a mixed bag reaction. There's nothing really bad around this album, but I wanted to not think about this album in comparison to the previous albums, like with the aforementioned Euthanasia and Rust in Peace, to Countdown to Extinction. For me, being a Megadeth fan who likes a lot of cryptic writings and enjoys a lot of Risk, The World Needs a Hero is quite a divisive album for a lot of the fans. This is the first album to be signed with the involvement of Sanctuary Records, since Risk was the final album with the involvement of Capitol Records. I totally respect and understand what Dave Mustaine wanted to create on this album with the return back to the occasional thrashier, more heavy metal sound after what they've attempted on the Risk era of the band and cryptic writings. But with what I'm going to be saying in this review will probably stir some reactions to different comments, but I am really interested to know what you truly think about this album. The opening song is called Disconnect. Starts things in a pretty decent way to hear Mustaine's opening guitar licks to the growing pacing that sounds intriguing, especially with the variation of the drum beats. But the chorus, when it happens, doesn't go into anything memorable of a hook while it goes on, and the song to me all the way through sounded quite mediocre, not as catchy, and while the structure is decent, the guitar solos were really good as they always complement the rhythm. It's not as an explosive and exciting number. Disconnect is one of those songs that I wanted to enjoy it, but it was not one of my favourite Megadeth songs in terms of listening to an album that would make me feel attachments with. The song is about having a double life, and that when things don't go right, you just go to that other place. You just disconnect and go into this dream world, someone with a double life and hiding their true self. The chorus does go into the thought of being disconnected from reality and to be away from feeling dissatisfied, but feeling the anxieties of what is real or not. The later verses question the burden of existence in the disconnected world, using pretty scars as a coping mechanism after the past experiences of trauma. However, when you're trying to find comfort during these difficult times, the pain stays rather than ends. The title track of The World Needs a Hero is a song that I actually really enjoy. The sounds of the bass, guitar and the drums start the track. Mustaine's spoken word delivery comes up and he continues to do it in that way a lot of the time. The instrumentation, for me, does have a much better direction and the chorus sounds pretty great from how simple it is with the minor riff and the vocal harmonies. The drums from Jimmy were awesome as the playing from him adds a lot of power, as well as with Al Pitrelli's lead guitar solo work. I like the increasing boost of energy later on into the song, which was, to me, the best part. The whole song to me is very, very good, and I like the overall tone of the instrumentation. The lyrics is basically full of this political tyranny references quite a lot of the time on here, and to blame the government who took complete control of the institutions through the world, the individuality being used and treated negatively through the lack of authenticity, heavily against the state of corruption and wanting to have a heroic figure to bring a change for the positive direction. The World Needs a Hero is a song that I've always enjoyed so much. A really good second song. Then the album goes into a complete nosedive with the single Motorcycle. The music is full of action, double bass pedaling and quicker speeds. It definitely does sound like something that is full of passion and adrenaline. However, the lyrics are bland and ridiculous. They totally have been distracting the enjoyment of what I wanted to like. This is the worst song on the album and one of my very least favourite Megadeth songs because of the inspiration. I did like how it sounds through the music, but I cannot surpass these lyrics. It's a terribly generic song about the travelling of going to work, spending most of the time either working or resting, through the experiences of day-to-day life, working, and the repetition of doing the same things constantly. I'm flabbergasted that this was released as a single. The title track could have been a much better pick. Motorcycle is a horribly bland, weak song to me. 1000 Times Goodbye is a song that starts in a basic, I guess, sinister tone from Dave Mustaine, and then the hook is consistent through the rhythmic playing as the song moves forward. I find it super distracting to hear spoken words from a woman called Heather Keckler as I tried to hear the fantastic brilliance of Al Pitrelli's guitar playing. He adds so much of the strength to this album. But when I wanted to hear more of the guitar than the spoken words, in that part of the song, it always baffles me. All the time. Despite that, I liked the change of key on the chorus, which adds some kind of a transitional pace and performance. The lyrics are like a pretty confrontational, expressive approach rather than to feel vulnerable and emotional. I get what the idea was for this song, but as a whole, the whole execution of the song doesn't do any justice to really absorb it as a favourable song. Besides that, there's so much of the very good sounds of Jimmy's drumming and the musicianship that have been great. As a song, it doesn't do anything for me at all, because sometimes I was losing interest. The song is entirely based on a breakup. Through the experiences, and while it was happening, there's the amount of a reclaiming part of self-worth after the bad memories. Heather Keckler, she used to work for the band's website for 9 years. under the names of She-Wolf, amongst different names. In 2006, she auctioned her memorabilia of what she used to have of Megadeth stuff on eBay. She drifted herself apart from being a fan of the band and to never return again. She did the spoken word parts on Motorpsycho and the title track too. Burning Bridges is a song that has a difference of tone as you hear clean guitars faintly heard while the booming toms from Jimmy's kit sounded big. I like the boost of the confidence of progression through the variety. To me, this is a song that sounds brilliant. The instrumentation has been full of these melodies that sounded exciting, as well as some harmony. I find the meaning of the lyrics to be interesting, but the way these lyrics were written in the whole execution sounded cheesy and dumb by some of the few lines into the song. I love the bigger and faster beats and manic playing that brings more of the heaviness. That's the best part of the song. I really liked Burning Bridges so much better than most of the earlier songs. The imagery of the lyrics go into the idea of, at first, the self-sabotage, and then afterwards, the importance of taking your own responsibility for your own actions by moving forward with motivations to grow your self-belief and staying true to who you are, because if you do, you wouldn't be trapped in the same problems you've been repeating a lot of the time. The next track, Promises, is one of my big favourites on this album. The acoustic guitar switchable sound into something sweet and delicate to hear, the balladry with the involved excellent orchestrated arrangements. It's one of my favourites because of both of these separate sounds that make this as the change of mood and heart that I think is a wonderful combination. The change of the usual imagery and thinking appears on this song. This goes into the theme of love that's been forbidden and wanting to have a connection while being in a world that's filled with prejudices. Two lovers in intense connection, but feeling the pain of being separated because of breaking the boundaries based on anything like race and religions. The love is too strong and the melancholic nature still continues, so the sacrifices have to be made. The chorus's repeated line expresses the thought of being together in the afterlife, so like a Romeo and Juliet inspiration. Besides some of the positives from earlier, Promises to me is one of the better tracks. Recipe for Hate Warhorse at first instantly starts things as loud from its build-up, and then an abrupt change of volume appears with Dave's return to be speaking out his words. You hear more of David Ellefson's bass lines as the higher guitar notes were played. The experiment was pretty cool actually, and I like the change of acoustic guitar playing occasionally. Dave's way of thinking of the lyrics continue the first part of the song, then the second part goes into the return of distortion and instrumentation that goes through the frenetic, wild, interactive, fun jamming with flashy guitar skills across the fretboards. The first part of the song goes into Dave's personal negative experiences with Capitol Records. They were incompetent, disliking, and so strict. Loads of the words are instantly showing the frustration, being mistreated from the record company, increasing the tension. So it's basically like Dave's fuck off to the record label, continuing this feeling of being broken down emotionally and mentally. And the second part of Warhorse sees the emotion of being ignored and isolated, along with the thought if anyone out there would listen to what Dave has been saying out loud. I really enjoy this one so much. Another one of my favourites. The next track is Losing My Senses, which did have a change of reaction from what I thought about it at first, because previously I was so lost and I thought it was one of the other weaker tracks and its whole repetition didn't help. But the more I listened to it, I really started to appreciate it from the way it was written, and it does try to make some kind of atmosphere with the imagery through the experiencing lyrics. Throughout the entirety, the lyrics are commenting about the state of the world with lots of its problems, including the hypocrisy, making lies to one another, not accepting them, and to not deal with the harsh truths. The world has been in its decaying, deserting state, and the beauty has been taken away. The sense of both the confusion and disorientation to understand these difficulties of both life and society, it has been experienced in its whole devastating view. Actions that don't have any meaning while we are all evolving. The last single and next track, Dread and the Fugitive Mind. While the song starts annoyingly like the Sweating Bullets copycat piece, which is cringeworthy to me in these verse sections, the song did get better through the melodic approach, and especially as the bridge section comes into it, you hear Jimmy's angry double bass pedaling control, chugging riffs, and it does have a highlight. This song features some of Al's best ever accomplished solo work. It is phenomenal and grueling. Despite the usual close up to the mic voice parts from earlier in the song, it is a great song. Dave wrote the lyrics about the talks of moral judgment, and there were other references with God and morality. Opening lyrics show the struggle with the judgment and questions if there is no God. Dave's writing of the lyrics had been taken into his own way of thinking, as he thought if God exists or not, and it would create a difference of people's beliefs, and the later lyrics would make people reflect that. Dave is a born-again Christian since the 2000s, and his lyrics are written as him being a character who decides not to show any compassion and mercy and steals from anyone. The chorus show a reference to a philosophical meaning about why people should believe in God, although many would say it's not possible with no evidence that he exists. People would say he does with biblical teachings. If people say he doesn't, the difference wouldn't be the same. Mustaine's idea of people building philosophical... The later verses shows the idea of building these psychological barriers to protect each other without being questioned about these motifs, and to hope they would not get caught. People would self-reflect and start to question and confront their own moral beliefs from their actions. Besides this very interesting and quite reflective way of imagination through the inspiration, Dread and the Fugitive Mind is another highlight. Silent Scorn is a very small, brief, I would say an interlude piece, a minor, unsettling, dark acoustic guitar piece with snares, lead guitars and trumpets building the music up further and further. I don't mind hearing this one, but then it leads into what could have been, for me, the stronger, better fit as a closer of Return to Hangar. The band returns back to this signature descriptive storytelling like what they did previously. I would go as far as to say that this is my main personal favourite. The song is full of this admiring speeds, chemistry and ferociousness of the song's power that's full of rage, endless, complementing explosions of solos that's in your face. Return to Hangar is, for me, one of the better later Megadeth songs. It is a sequel to Hangar 18 from Rust in Peace, and all of these lyrics follow the same concept. The government has been terminated and the aliens had crash landed on Earth after the navigation systems being powerless and the computers have also been broken. The tragedy from the events of Hangar 18 continues, and Hangar 18 has a connection to the military. The government people have taken their own lives, and they didn't address what was happening in the world and the return of Hangar 18. The aliens have escaped, revived and terminated as much civilians as possible at Hangar. This is a fantastic song, and I really have admired so much of what has been an amazing achievement. To hear both Mustaine and Pitrelli to join together. The album concludes with the 9-minute track When. The main riff has been taken from Metallica's instrumental masterpiece of The Call of Cthulhu. We know that Mustaine did get a writing credit on that beginning part of the song. Descending chords, haunting acoustics, and Dave tries to add some kind of tension through the first 3 minutes of ambience, surrounding sounds that goes all over the place. And then it changes into the heavy hitting toms, chugging E chord, loud cymbal crashes. The song then has been taken for the most part as like a tribute to Am I Evil by King Diamond. I think it was a subpar idea to combine these different sounds into one, even though obviously the lyrics have their own meaning. But as a final song, it's pretty disappointing and a very underwhelming pick to think that this is the song that finalizes everything on this album. It is underwhelming. Like I said, Return to Hangar could have been the better, perfect fit to finish off this album. According to the lyrics, Dave said, and I quote, "When is about being loyal to someone who is just the absolute worst possible person to be with, in that they just keep hurting you and keep hurting you. Then it goes from the first person to the third person, where I'm saying, you know what, are you ever going to know when? There comes a time when the horse is dead. You need to dismount." Overall, The World Needs a Hero by Megadeth, for me personally, is never one of my favourite albums in the whole discography. I get a lot of these positives that when these songs do work, they were great. Especially the more than a few times repetition of Al Pitrelli's outstanding, amazing contributions of his own work of guitar playing and his wizardry of skills, to the production that I like quite a lot, Jimmy DeGrasso's final album with Megadeth on the drums. He was brilliant. Dave Mustaine's inspirations sometimes fall flat for me on some of these parts, and sometimes his sound of his vocals sound tired and not energized and pretty disappointing. Even though, yes, Mustaine can be a take it or leave it vocalist for me and for many people, but when he sounds awesome on some of the previous albums, he is brilliant. But on here, his vocals have been quite disappointing in places. I'm going to give The World Needs a Hero by Megadeth, I would say, a 6 out of 10. It's an above average album, but it's still not saying much to really cite it as a brilliant album. Even though I liked some of these moments of brilliant songs to some intriguing moments, but as an album, it's not one of those that I really enjoy so much. Thank you guys for watching, and I will keep you guys posted for more videos in the near future.